Call Eugenia Sage.
Speaker. Mr Speaker, this is a budget which doesn't just entrench a current account deficit, but it would create an asset deficit, entrench a skills deficit, an environmental deficit, and potentially also a democracy deficit in Christchurch. Asset sales is a cornerstone of this budget, and that's looking about as derelict and crumbly as some of the buildings in Christchurch. The asset sales program is in disarray. This John Key, John Banks government should just admit that asset sales are poorly conceived, poorly timed, unlikely to yield the revenue that the government had claimed, and call them all off. Because when asked about how he saw the government's sales plans for Solid Energy, given the plunging international prices for coal and coke, Solid Energy COE Don Elder was reported in Saturday's press as saying, and I quote, "In the current world, there aren't too many normal investors looking to buy coal companies, but the people who invest in coal companies are saying there are bargains left, right and centre," end quote. So why give away shares in Solid Energy at bargain basement prices when that company could be repositioned with a much more progressive research and development and investment strategy to increase its investments in biomass and biofuels instead of speculating on a climate-destroying lignite conversion plant in Southland? Why give away shares in Solid Energy and our other energy companies when they could be repositioned to get a slice of the trillion-dollar renewable energy market internationally? Solid Energy is looking to cut $120 million off its operating costs because of those falling coke and coal prices. A good place to start would be stopping preparing for asset sales. The company's wasted $130,000 on that, but we have hundreds of thousands of people signing up to our petition to seek a referendum on asset sales. Asset sales are opposed by the public. We will get that referendum. Mr Speaker, if the government goes ahead with asset sales in the current recessionary climate, it will be selling assets that have been built up over generations at the worst possible time. It will be taking the wrecking ball to the dividend stream that we receive from Meridian, Mighty River Power, Genesis and Solid Energy. And, Mr Speaker, there's huge uncertainty with the Waitangi Tribunal yet to report, the whole issue of treaty rights over water nowhere near close to being resolved. So that means that potential bidders for Mighty River Power will downsize their bids to take account of this uncertainty. Similarly, with Meridian and the Tiwai Point contract being renegotiated, Mr Speaker, asset sales would be a disaster, the same disaster that this government has overseen in terms of failing to create jobs, failing to create hope. There are 65,000 more people out of work today than when National came into power. And with its budget and with its whole economic direction, this government is failing to give hope to young people. There's been a failure to stop the flood of New Zealanders across the Tasman. More than 1,000 New Zealanders a week are going across the Tasman because they've given up on John Key's brighter future and they're seeking their future in Australia instead. Mr Speaker, that's creating a skills deficit and a human deficit. And we're getting a democracy deficit in Christchurch because of Sarah's draconian powers in planning and facilitating the city's post-quake rebuild and the need for much more...
Order. Silence for the member. The member cannot tell a truth. Ask the member to withdraw that comment. Ask the member to withdraw that comment.
Thank you, Mr
Eugenia
Speaker.
Sage.
It's a democracy deficit, Mr Speaker, because we haven't seen the information about key decisions. We're not getting enough transparency around those decisions because we don't know who's going to be making the decisions, Sarah or the City Council, on some of the key civic assets that Christchurch residents will be funding through their rates as well as their taxes. Is it elected councillors on the Christchurch City Council representing Christchurch citizens, or is it Sarah on decisions like the future of the Centennial Pool? In June, as part of its long-term plan, the Council passed a unanimous resolution asking staff to report back on the feasibility and cost of repairing the Centennial Pool in central Christchurch, so that people in the central city and Christchurch East would have somewhere to recreate, somewhere to swim. The Council's own engineering reports show that the pool could be repaired for a cost of around $1.8 to $2.3 million. And the Council had earmarked money in its own annual plan for operating costs for the pool. Yet Sarah's blueprint for the central city shows a playground where the pool is. So this Thursday, the City Council will further consider the issue, and there will be a major democracy deficit if Sarah, through its compulsory land purchases, overrides the decision of the City Council to investigate the repair and restoration of the pool facility, because it was used prior to the quakes by around 1,000 people daily. Mr. Speaker, we need to tackle the fundamental problems in our economy with a smart, green economic plan. If we'd had a green budget, that would have been about ensuring that we protected our natural assets, that we shared our prosperity fairly, and ensured that we had a good quality of life. That green budget would have involved retaining our state-owned energy companies in public ownership and refocusing them towards exporting their renewable energy expertise. A green budget would have extended the Warm Up New Zealand Heat Smart program to another 200,000 homes over the next 3 years. That would create jobs for another 4,000 people directly and another 10,000 people if you include the indirect effects. A green budget would have moved to a fairer tax system and enhanced our fiscal resilience by introducing a capital gains tax, excluding the family home. That would enhance the revenue stream for government, and it would have helped shift capital away from the largely unproductive property sector into much more productive uses, including the clean technology sector. A green budget would have reprioritised our transport spending away from billion-dollar motorways that we can't afford and towards sustainable investment that takes account of peak oil into better bus and rail systems. A green budget would have put a commercial price on the commercial use of water, again to provide a tax on resource use rather than just relying on taxes on income. It would have put a real price on carbon, and it would have supported a living wage by raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Mr. Speaker, a green budget would recognise that planet economy lives on and relies on planet Earth. It's not somewhere else. The exploitation agenda of this current government means that even its rhetoric has moved away from balancing the environment against the economy to just getting on with it, to hell with the environment, full steam ahead with the use and abuse of natural resources. That's why we've seen, Mr. Speaker, at the weekend, the Economic Development Minister, Stephen Joyce, commenting that government will be sitting on the shoulder of local government, whipping it along. That government's proposing amendments to the Resource Management Act, which would gut the sustainable management purpose of the Act. It would speed applications through. That's why ministers like Stephen Joyce want the Bathurst proposal on the Denniston Plateau to go ahead, regardless of the fact that there's virtually no coal measure ecosystems protected on conservation land other than on the Denniston Plateau, and that this is an Australian mining company which would totally destroy a lot of the biodiversity and the distinctive species there. This government's agenda is about resource exploitation and to hell with the environment. A green budget would involve a much more sustainable footing for our economy, which puts the respect and protection of nature at the centrepiece of sustainable economic use. Thank you.
I call David Bennett.